Two people stand on a stage with a dark banner listing various U.S. government departments and agencies. The person on the left wears a ranger hat and tan uniform while holding a microphone. The person on the right wears a white cap and light-colored shirt.
Glad to have you with us. This is the Tent of Many Voices, and it is part of a traveling exhibit that has been following the Lewis and Clark Trail since January of 2003. Started in Monticello, the place of Jefferson's dream, went on across through the eastern states, then from St. Louis to the Mandan Villages in 2004, in 2005 from the Mandan Villages all the way to the Pacific Ocean, and now here we are in 2006, and we're doing the return journey just as Lewis and Clark did 200 years ago. And we're delighted to be here at Pompey's Pillar. Thank you all very much for inviting us here, and thank you all for coming out to visit with us and to see all the festivities that are going on here. This is a commemoration of that event 200 years ago. Lewis and Clark crossed the continent, and they could not have done it alone. If it had just been Lewis and Clark, it would have been another of those failed expeditions to the west. So with that in mind, I'd like you to remember the people who assisted Lewis and Clark on their journey. The Native Americans gave them food, they gave them directions, and they often helped them with their transportation needs. So with that, I'd like to introduce you to our next speaker. Today we have with us Conrad Fiser, who is a member of the Northern Cheyenne tribe. He is also the Tribal Historic Preservation Officer and an educator at Chief Dull Knife College. He's going to be talking about Northern Cheyenne history and culture, so let's please make him welcome.
Thank you very much. First of all, I'd like to thank Mary Ellen and the rest of the folks for inviting me over here to be part of this signature event, Clark on the Yellowstone. As I was leaving this morning, I wasn't sure exactly how long it was going to take to get here. And as I was about 20 miles away, I noticed that time was getting a little short. So I thought to myself, well, I said, if I'm late, I'm going to have to come up with something for being late. And I thought about Indian time, and how Indian time usually means you're either 15, 20 minutes early or 15 or 20 minutes late. So fortunately, I didn't have to use that, but that did cross my mind real quick. I needed to use some excuse. This is actually the first time I've been here, and it's such a wonderful sight to see all the folks that are gathered here as part of this signature event. I know there's a lot of folks from out of town that are also part of it, and many different tribes.
A person wearing glasses, a light-colored short-sleeved shirt, and jeans stands in front of a banner listing various U.S. government departments and agencies. They face the camera in what appears to be an indoor presentation space.
When I had gotten a call to do the presentation, I wasn't exactly sure what this would entail. And I think it's mostly based on the audience and wanting to at least tie something into the Lewis and Clark event. I guess I should first start off and say that the Cheyenne people had some contact with the explorers that came from St. Louis. Limited contact over near the present-day border of North Dakota and South Dakota along the Missouri River. However, it was very, very short. Some of the leaders at the time had refused or rejected the medal that was offered by Lewis and Clark. And this was based on the prophet Sweet Medicine, who said that, and he was a prophet that gave us our spiritual, ceremonial ways, the structure, the political structure of the Cheyenne people. In one of his prophecies, he mentioned that someday we will encounter this strange-looking man with hair on his face, and that he will bring with him an animal with a long mane, a strange animal, and that we were not to be part of his enticements. Because if we do, and he would also bring a strange animal with split hooves, and the animal's meat would be sweet, and that we would take a liking to this meat, and then we would be under the auspices of this strange man. And so that was part of the, and there were a number of other prophecies that he gave to the Cheyenne people. But as far as the Lewis and Clark, this was something that sort of tied into the coming of the European into what we considered our homeland, the Black Hills area. It was sort of strange that some of the prophecies that he predicted have come true in many ways.
A person in a light gray shirt and light blue jeans stands on a stage beside a black banner listing various U.S. government departments and agencies. The person faces toward the right side of the frame.
We've become more dependent on the Western way of life today. We love beef. Beef is good. We're in the process of revitalizing our buffalo program, and I think there's a trend toward ethnicity in terms of living, at least partially, some of the old ways. Just a brief history about Lewis and Clark. First of all, I'd like to give you a little background on the Cheyenne people, the origin of the Cheyenne people, their migration, just to give you a little background about who we are, where we came from, where we went, what our role was in the shaping of the Western Plains wars. Many of you may or may not know that the Cheyenne were involved in many battles with the U.S. government during the 1800s. And we sort of shaped the Plains Indian history along with several other tribes. One of the last tribes to throw in the towel, so to speak. Many of you know the Battle of the Little Bighorn, or as we call it, where long hair was wiped away. And I'll be talking a little bit more about it here later. Now, about das it's I'm still see it now. It's just that's about about what has just still no man it. That's about now. It's about just now how just like to thank everybody for being here and me being part of this. My Indian name is Travoy, been passed down from many generations. With the Cheyenne and with a lot of tribes, the people, the faces may come and go, but the names are always carried down in a lineal sense. So the name Travoy has been with our family for many generations. Normally those names are inherited through your lineal descent. The Northern Cheyenne are part of the Algonquian-speaking language family. The Algonquian speakers include the Ottawa, the Mohegan, the Kickapoo, the Potawatomi, the Cree, the Blackfeet, and our closest family.
A person in a light-colored shirt and jeans stands on a concrete floor facing an audience seated in blue chairs. Behind them is a dark banner listing various U.S. federal agencies and departments. A screen is visible on the right side.
Or the closest language family would be the Arapaho. And this is based on oral history and also on linguists who can trace the languages back to their mother language. And if you put all that together, our histories start in the Hudson Bay area. In fact, that's where a lot of tribes have their origin stories. The land of many lakes, or Turtle Island. And as our oral histories indicate, we call this time the ancient time, where there was no horses, no dogs, cold weather. We were mostly hunter-gatherers, didn't have the bow and arrow, used spears, fished in the lakes. And this can be verified through scientific data and also through our oral histories. Sometime there was an event that occurred, a pressure that moved the Cheyenne southward. In our oral histories, it indicates that there was a great disease that forced the movement, and also famine into the Great Lakes area. In our oral histories, it says that we had crossed the Great Marsh. So great was the marsh that our scouts were afraid to cross this vast marsh for the fear of being lost. And it was, they used long poles to be able to find their way around. And as we know it today, it's on the western part of the Great Lakes area. And we lived in close to the Great Lakes area for a while, cultivated wild rice, fished, small game hunters, ate a lot of bird. There's a hill there that is called Hill of the Skunks. And in this area, we had an annual skunk hunt. And so we feasted on skunks every fall. I'm not sure if I'd do that today. I've never eaten a skunk, but that's part of our oral histories. I don't know if we've got a skunk society or not, but and also this was the time of the bow and arrow. In our histories, we call it the time of the bow and arrow. So if you look at it from a scientific perspective, it's probably 1,500, 2,000 years ago. That's about the time scientists say that the bow and arrow was invented here in the...
A person in a light-colored shirt and jeans stands at a microphone in a large tent. Behind them is a banner listing various U.S. government departments and agencies. Blue chairs are visible in the foreground.
Northern country. Little later on, we moved even further south down to the Missouri and where the Minnesota River cross. And that was during the 1600s. Between the 1600s and 1700s, we became, let me back up just a little bit. In Minnesota, we lived in small dome-shaped huts. And then by the 1700s, we started moving westward. A lot of pressure from the eastern tribes. Kind of a trickle effect. We became part of the Corn Belt, which is the area where you grow a lot of corn and tobacco and beans and squash, that sort of thing. And at that point, we became a sedentary tribe, conducive for farming. And because of the pressure there, we slowly moved our way northward into the Dakotas, all the way up to North Dakota. In southeastern North Dakota is a river called Cheyenne River. Starts with an S. The Sioux call it where the Cheyenne plant corn. And that's a documented palisade, or what is commonly known as the Biesterfeld site. So in historical times and also in our oral history, and also from other tribes, that was a known Cheyenne fort. And as we start going westward, we start to see instability of the climate. At that point, we moved suddenly southwest. We had a lot of pressure from the Assiniboine. By this time, they had acquired the gun, whereas we still had the bow and arrow. And we have many stories about the defeat by the Assiniboine and the Chippewas because of their ability to acquire the gun before the Cheyenne folks did. By the early 1700s, we had moved into the Missouri area, and at this time we had acquired the horse. So we went from a fishing, bird gatherer, wild rice cultivators to another transition to being farmers.
A person in a light-colored polo shirt and jeans stands in front of a large banner listing various U.S. government agencies and departments. A microphone is visible on a stand to their left.
And now we were in another transition phase into a horse culture. And at this time, we also became allies with the Arikara and had a love-hate relationship with the Mandan and the Grobon. And of course, they feared Assiniboine because of the technology that they had acquired from the fur traders further up north. And it's about this time in the late 1700s that we start seeing visitors from the west, from the north, and from the south. There was actually folks from Mexico that would come up and visit the tribes, the sedentary tribes, the Mandan, Arikara, and Hidatsa. And in our oral histories, we have stories about the Mexicans coming up north to visit the Black Hills area. About this time, there's some confusion whether or not the Cheyenne had actually met the non-Indians. And it was at this time that we discovered the center of our universe, and that would be Bear Butte, or as we call it, Nuwawus. This is where we found our political, social structure. This is where the prophet Sweet Medicine gave the arrows, the sacred bundle of the Cheyenne people. We were also in that phase of becoming a horse culture. We were still growing tobacco and corn. But we'd plant and then we'd go out to the plains and acquire food. The buffalo was the primary source of food at this time. And it was at one of these times when the Cheyenne had planted food on another river called the Cheyenne River, starting with a C. And they'd plant this corn, and what they did was they'd have these plum bushes. For most of you that are familiar with plum bushes, they have these thorns coming out. And what they did was they tie the...
A person in a light-colored shirt and blue jeans stands on a stage with their hands raised, speaking. Behind them is a dark banner displaying text listing various federal agencies and departments. Video screens are visible to the right.
Plum bushes together, and they'd make a fence to keep out other animals, particularly buffalo and deer. And during one of their return trips to harvest the corn, they noticed strange footprints. And they weren't moccasin footprints. These had a strange print to them. And they they couldn't figure out who it was. But we do know that there was routes being traveled by Mexicans and non-Indians around the Black Hills area. And it was about this time in 1806, I think, on Lewis and Clark's return trip, that he offered the medal to the Cheyenne people. And initially it was refused, but eventually, and the purpose of that was that the Cheyennes knew that this was bad medicine based on the prophecies of sweet medicine. So that was our encounter with Lewis and Clark. However, we did ask him to teach us how to trap beaver and other pelts. We didn't know the way to trap them to where they could be sold commercially. And we never heard back from him after that. So that was kind of he promised he'd bring back the traps, but he never did come back. We're still waiting for him, by the way. Although we don't have any more beaver, so the point is moot. During this time, we went through this transition of being a horse culture called the time of the buffalo. From the Palisades in eastern North Dakota to the time we acquired the horse, it just changed the social organization of the Cheyenne people, as with many other tribes. Number of advantages of the horse is that we didn't look at the horse initially as being a beast of burden. We looked at him as, in practical terms, as feeding a lot of families. So probably the first few horses were probably good eating until we figured out that they could also...
A person in a light-colored shirt and blue jeans stands on a stage with a microphone on a stand. Behind them is a black backdrop displaying white text listing various U.S. government departments and agencies.
Also be used as pack animals. And of course, as we know, the horse has many advantages versus a dog. Dog can only carry so much weight. Movement is fairly slow. Whereas a horse, you have many advantages, just superior to the dog, to the canine. And so it changed dramatically the way we viewed our hunting, our warfare, our trade. It became a trade item of value to the sedentary tribes further north, and this would be the Mandan and Hidatsa and Arikara. So we sort of found ourselves as being middlemen as we made our way past the Black Hills and further south. And the incentive for moving south by the early 1800s was that the horses came out of Mexico. So if you have something of value, you want to go to the source, and this would be to move further south. But first of all, we had to try to convince some of the Plains Indians that were in our way to move further south, and that was through warfare. And so the Kiowa, the Pawnee, the Comanche, the Crow, the Shoshone were some of the groups that we fought during that time. By the 1850s, we were pretty well established all the way down to Oklahoma and New Mexico. We covered western Kansas, western Nebraska, all along the Rocky Mountain front in Wyoming, here in southeastern Montana, Colorado, and we developed a political system where we had the Council of 44. 10 major bands. There was 10 major band of Cheyennes. And you had, out of that 10 major bands were the Council of 44. So, and then we had 4 Oman chiefs that sort of made up the structure of the Cheyenne. And this was also the beginning of the, if we look at the horse, we start to see
a person in a light-colored shirt and blue jeans stands at a microphone on a stage. Behind them is a large black banner displaying text listing various U.S. government departments and agencies. A video screen is visible to the right.
This phenomenon called the counting coup. And I think that was evident in many Plains tribes. It became more of a status symbol, rank and prestige. And the idea, of course, is to touch the enemy without killing it, either with your hand or with a stick. The killing of an enemy was secondary, but the primary purpose of receiving recognition was to count coup on the enemy. And also, the scalping was also considered a trophy, but it was also not the primary purpose for getting recognition. And so horse stealing became sort of a real special skill, and the Cheyenne were no different than any other tribe in acquiring these types of skills. Became very, very expert horsemen. This was the beginning of the separation between the northern bands and the southern bands of the Cheyenne people. This was also the beginning, by the 1850s, of westward movement to California and some of the other places. Santa Fe Trail became established. Later, the Oregon Trail, and much later, the Bozeman Trail. So you start to see these divisions. And of course, this led to many wars for the Cheyenne people. Not only were they warring with, primarily at this point, the Pawnee, the Kiowa, the Shoshone, and the Crow, but also with the U.S. government at the time. As I mentioned, we found ourselves in the midst of this buffalo trade. Fort Bent was established in southeastern Colorado to trade with buffalo. We still were friendly with the tribes over in North Dakota. We still had these ties with them. We traded horses for guns and other Western goods. We sort of deviated from making arrowheads because by that time metal points were the choice of use. And metal, kettles, number of other things, European beads, number of European trade items. But the primary focus was buffalo.
A person in a light-colored shirt and jeans stands on a stage next to a podium, facing an audience. Behind them is a dark banner listing various U.S. government agencies and departments. Audience members sit in the foreground.
And by that time, it was just a traumatic change for the Cheyenne people. Not only for the Cheyenne, but also for the animals as well. I always say that, there was a number of different diseases that were coming into the Plains Indians at the time. Smallpox was one of the primary diseases, but also with the animals. The buffalo acquired brucellosis from the exotic animals coming in from Europe. So it wasn't only just and also plants. So it wasn't just the people, but it was also the animals and the plants that were being affected tremendously. really a time of instability, because you have not only changing to a horse culture, but also the influx of Western civilization into what we considered Cheyenne territory. So just a tremendous change for the Cheyenne people in terms of their political structure, their social structure, and also the whiskey traders coming in from Mexico. So we kind of took a liking to that fire water also. Not very good for us. And as a result of this conflict, the gold rush in California, westward migration, discovery of gold in the Pikes Peak, and also the Black Hills in the early 1860s, a number of events occurred, and that would be the Plains Wars. The first treaty of the Cheyenne was the Friendship Treaty, and that was near the Black Hills. And later on, there was other treaties, Fort Laramie Treaty of 1851, another treaty in 1865, and then 1868, Fort Laramie Treaty. Of course, none of them ever held. They were all broken. So, but we tried to be friendly and make treaties. As a result of these conflicts, we have a whole host of battles that I just want to name a few that may or may not sound familiar. The Fort Fetterman fight in Wyoming occurred in the mid-1800s. Gentleman was bragging about how he could...
A person in a light-colored shirt and blue jeans stands on a stage, facing an audience. Behind them is a dark banner with white text listing various government agencies and departments. Audience members sit in the foreground.
Ride through Indian country with 80 men and come out victorious. Well, he was half right. He drove into a bunch of Indians, but he never made it out. So his prediction was half true. The wagon box fight is another one here in Wyoming. And these all occurred in the mid-1800s. The Powder River battle, where we start to see the rounding up of Indians that didn't necessarily want to go to reservations. And these are all Cheyenne battles. The Tongue River skirmish, Battle of the Rosebud. Some of you probably know that. That was a prelude to the Battle of the Little Bighorn. And of course, the most famous that everybody knows is the Battle of the Little Bighorn. And also after that battle was Chief Dull Knife battle with the U.S. government. And after that was the Wolf Mountain battle, or Battle of Billy Butte. Let me just go back to the Fetterman. We call it 100 in hand because of the fact that one of our spiritual leaders had a vision that 100 soldiers would be handed to the Cheyenne people. So the Cheyenne know that battle as 100 in hand. The Battle of the Rosebud, we know this battle as where the girl saved her brother. During the battle, one of the warriors was caught in a crossfire, and his horse was shot under him. And there was impending death looming. The sister who had actually been part of the battle saw this, and she ran the gauntlet to save her brother and came back. And this was witnessed by a number of warriors and also by the cavalry. And so the Cheyenne know this as where the sister saved her brother. Battle of the Little Bighorn is what we know as where long hair was wiped away. And we call it that because early on,
A person in a light gray shirt and blue jeans stands on a small stage, speaking to an audience. Behind them is a black banner displaying text listing various U.S. government departments and agencies. Two audience members are visible in the foreground.
During the Battle of the Washita in Oklahoma in 1866, General George Armstrong Custer had a battle with the Cheyenne. He did capture a village, but some of his men were killed there. And after that battle was over, he smoked the pipe with our sacred arrow keeper of the arrows. And after the smoke, the ashes were wiped on the ground, on his boot. The sacred arrow keeper wiped the ashes into the ground. And when you smoke a pipe, you've committed yourself to keeping that promise. And that sort of sealed his destiny, according to the Cheyenne, that if he ever fought the Cheyenne again, that his ashes would be wiped into the ground. So today, the Cheyenne know this battle as where long hair was wiped away. So we had this intimate relationship with long hair. Wolf Mountain, the Battle of Wolf Mountain was after the Battle of the Little Bighorn, and we know it as where Big Crow danced in front of the soldiers. He was a warrior that, to show his bravery, would dance in front of the soldiers and shoot at them to show his bravery and his medicine. And unfortunately, after the third time of dancing, he was mortally wounded. But the odds were against his favor. Anytime you see a bunch of people shooting at you and you're going back and forth, you're probably going to get shot sooner or later. And that's kind of what happened here. And of course, when we finally threw in the towel in 1877, the spring of 1877, we were moved down to Oklahoma, to Indian Territory. A lot of you know that this was considered Indian Territory. A lot of the eastern tribes were moved over to Oklahoma Territory in an event called the Trail of Tears. The Cheyenne were no different. Some of the southern bands had already established a reservation there. For the northern bands, this was a long trip on foot. We stayed there for a year and a half. By 1878, through the leadership of Chief Dullknife and Chief Little Wolf and some others, Wild Hog, Turkey Leg, some of those folks, we decided we wanted to come back up to our northern homeland. We felt this.
A person in a light-colored shirt and jeans stands on a stage speaking to an audience seated in front. Behind them is a large black banner displaying text listing various government agencies and departments. A screen is visible on the right side.
This was our homeland. And it was an incredible journey of endurance. And unfortunately, part of the band was captured in Fort Robinson in northwestern Nebraska. And there they broke out. A lot of folks were killed. Finally, we made it to our homeland here in the North Country. And in 1884, the Northern Cheyenne Reservation was established here in southeastern Montana in the present community called Lame Deer. And it's an area that we hold dear to our hearts, and that we try to maintain its pristine condition. We've not allowed any type of natural or economic development in terms of our mineral resources, because our ancestors fought long and hard to secure this area for the Northern Cheyenne people. Another battle was the Sand Creek Battle. I don't know how many of you know about it, but it was in Colorado. So we had a long, hard history with the U.S. government, the shaping of federal Indian policy here on the plains. The last confrontation was during the reservation days when a couple of young gentlemen decided that because they had killed a cow, they weren't going to go to jail. They said, we'd rather die as Cheyenne warriors. And so they, the night before, they camped on a butte, and they told everybody, they said, bring the soldiers, bring the Indian police, because tomorrow we're going to ride down this hill and we're going to die as Cheyenne warriors. And this was during the reservation days. And that's what they did. The next day they rode down in front of a firing line consisting of soldiers out of Miles City and also the local Indian police. One of them, head chief, made it through the line. The other one was killed as he was coming down the hill. So that was the last confrontation with the U.S. government, was in 1890, and that was during the reservation period. Today we have close to 450,000 acres of reservation land in southeastern Montana. Vast coal reserves there. IRA, Form of Government Indian Reorganization Act, or the Howard Wheeler Act. And that sort of briefly covers the Northern Cheyenne people.
A person stands at a podium on a stage, wearing a light-colored shirt and blue jeans. Several audience members sit facing the stage. A large banner behind lists various U.S. government agencies and departments. A screen displays images to the right.
At this time, I know I've seen the hand go up 5 minutes, but I'd like to ask if there's any questions that you have that I might be able to answer. I know that was quick, and you probably didn't know what I said, but that's okay. Yes?
Was it common to have a woman be interested in being a warrior, to go to battle, that sort of thing?
That's a good question. The question is, when the Battle of the Rosebud occurred, the woman saved her brother. How often were they participants in every battle? Depended on the situation. More than likely, the older women would do the caretaking, making preparations for those that were wounded. Some of the older women never, they were just as stressed as those that were fighting out there. But yes, there were women warriors within the tribe that did participate in the battles. In fact, there's a Cheyenne proverb that goes something like this, and I may not have exactly the quote, but I've mentioned this a number of times. No matter how strong a nation or how powerful their weapons, a nation is not defeated until the hearts of the women are on the ground. So I think that's a very powerful tribute to a woman warrior among the Cheyenne people. Thank you for asking that question. Anybody else?
If you'll raise your hand, we'll come around with a microphone and everyone can hear your
Testing.
question.
A couple of things that you left out. We had an article in the paper recently where Dr. Joseph Medicine Crow noted that counting coup also included killing an enemy, raiding the horses of others, and then leading into battle. And those all caused loss of Indian lives. And I also noticed that you left out the battle where the Cheyenne warrior Tall Bull was killed by retaliating Pawnee forces with the help of the U.S. Army, and Massacre Canyon, which also involved the Pawnee.
You have a question?
So why did you leave those out?
Well, if
A person in a light gray shirt and blue jeans stands on a small stage speaking to an audience. Behind them is a black backdrop with white text listing various government departments and agencies. Two audience members sit in the foreground viewing the presentation.
I guess if we had all day, we could get into intimate detail. And just a response to Medicine Crow, I think that every tribe is unique in their perspective of what counting coup is. So to say that Joe Medicine Crow version is indicative of all tribes is very wrong. And so, you know, he may be right according to the Crow, but the Cheyenne have their own unique interpretation of counting coup. And I think that's really the wrong attitude to have when you start to generalize about Native Americans and that they were and give them a simplistic view of who they were. Just because they lived in teepees doesn't mean that every teepee was the same. Very unique and diverse and in their own ways. So thank you for bringing that question up, and I hope that answers your question.
I have a question back here.
We could talk about it some more later, but you know, I've only got 40 minutes to do this. Normally, when I talk about the history of the Cheyenne, it takes me 1 semester to do this. So, you know, this is very brief. And to talk about a specific incident such as Talbot, I think that defeats the purpose of talking about the history of the Cheyenne people. Yes?
You mentioned briefly the effects of smallpox on your tribe, and I would like to have you enlarge on that because from what I understand, decimate is not the right word to use because it only means 1/10 of the people killed. And I know most of the tribes lost many, many more than some, up to 90%. And how did that affect the tribal order and the tribal history?
Good question. With any group, I think that when you lose the majority of your people, you're losing a lot of people that have specialized skills. And I'm looking at it from an anthropological perspective. You're looking at a lot of talent. You're looking at your spirituality. You're looking at your mother and father. You're looking at your sisters, your brothers. You're looking at warriors that have attained a certain status. So in essence, you're losing your history, your way of life. And that can, you know, we all know that can be devastating. Not only to disease, but to warfare. I mean, you know, not only were they losing to other diseases, but, you know, when you have warfare, you're also losing a lot of young warriors to those.
A person in a light-colored shirt stands on a small stage with a microphone, gesturing while speaking. Several audience members sit facing the stage. Behind them is a large banner listing various U.S. government agencies and departments.
Those particular events. So yes, I would say that this was really traumatic, historical trauma. And we still, today, we still have a lot of that embedded in our history, in our stories.
Any other questions? One right here. And this will probably be our last question.
Okay.
If you counted coup on me, you would receive an honor. What would I receive? A dishonor within my tribe? How did that work?
That's a good question. If I counted coup on you, and what would that leave you? You know, I would suspect that if you didn't die at the scene and wasn't scalped, I'm not sure exactly. I can't talk for other tribes. Yeah, but if you counted coup on me, I suspect that there would be some type of social control that would address that. But that's a very good question. I'm sure you wouldn't hear the end of that for a long time, especially if you were a female.
All right. right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you.